Hi friends, Sarah here with The Holy Mess, and this is the Faith Over Fear series, and today we are talking about, have you ever been falsely accused of something? And I'm going to be sharing a story from my life that I actually have not talked about very much because it's hard to talk about and it's painful that we experienced it, but I also see how God brought us through it, and I want to tell you about it because I know some of you have been through similarly painful things. And one of the toughest things when you have been falsely accused or someone has tried to attack you is letting go of the bitterness. It can become so easy to become bitter. And I'm going to read our passage and then we're going to talk about it. So this is the Faith Over Fear series. You can get the free printable at my website, theholymess.com. We've had tons of downloads this last month. I think we're getting, 5, 6, 7, 800. I don't know. It's been really awesome. So thank you so much to all of you who are reading along with us and watching the videos. So this is Psalm 56, verses 1 through 4. Be merciful to me, O God, for men hotly pursue me. All day long they press their attack. My slanderers pursue me all day long. Many are attacking me in their pride. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose words I praise, in God I trust. I will not be afraid. What can mortal man do to me? That's Psalm 56, 1 through 4. Yesterday I shared that this weekend we're celebrating my son's birthday, and he is 16, and he is such a miracle. We adopted him from foster care. He was born at 25 weeks. He was a twin. We lost his twin when he was a couple months old, and all of his life, because of the early things that he experienced, abuse, trauma, coming to us from foster care, he's had extreme behavior issues, aggression, just real difficulties coping in the world and having healthy relationships, which is so common with kids who have had trauma. And what I want to share with you, like I said, I have not shared this with very many people, I think because it's so deeply painful. The experience we went through, it's embarrassing, even though we did nothing wrong. It's hard. It's been years ago, and it's still hard for me to talk about. Long story short is because of my son's behaviors, because of trying to get him the care that he needs, my husband and I were taken to court by the county where we lived at the time, which was in Colorado, in Arapahoe County, for child abuse, basically, for neglect is like what I guess the actual charges were. And my heart is beating faster now, even years later, knowing we had a happy ending, knowing that happened. And we are not abusive parents by any stretch of the imagination. We are very, very good parents. And I don't say that like to brag. I mean, none of us is perfect parents, but we are highly skilled parents. We parented our own children and then 35 foster children, some of the toughest children we have parented, and some of the toughest behaviors we have parented, and parented well. We've had a lot of extensive training. We have worked very hard at it. We work together as a team. We've done some really, really tough and extreme parenting. I call it the beyond, parenting these kids who just have such extreme behaviors because of the trauma that they went through. So because of our son's behavior, he was not safe to live in our home. He was in and out of the hospital for mental health reasons. He was extremely aggressive, and aggressive to us, to his siblings, to other children. But the way the system is set up is that once you adopt a child, first of all, you're pretty much on your own. There are some resources, but not much. And they don't want the kids to come back into the system, which is understandable. But when you get to a point that a child is not safe to live at home, you don't have many options left. And that was where we were. And we had gotten to the point where we had to say, our son cannot come back home. And yet, like if he was at the hospital at the time, they said, we have to release him back to you because, we can't keep him here anymore. Like our criteria says he's safe to come come home. The insurance says he's safe to come home. And we were saying he can't come home. We cannot parent this child. And so it came down to the county then saying, well, if you will not take him back into your home, we will charge you with child neglect, which is what ultimately ended up happening. Not because we didn't want to parent our son, didn't love our son, didn't want to take care of our son, or weren't good parents, but his behavior was to the point that he was dangerous to his siblings. And we had to think about them and their safety too. And our son, we wanted to make sure that he got the care that he needed. And we were brought up on charges. We did go to court. We did hire an attorney, even though we couldn't afford it. You do what you have to do. And in some ways, our story had a happy ending, in some ways not. That time was devastating and scary, and we were about to our breaking point. At one point, my husband and my son moved out of our home and were living with our in-laws because we just felt like he could not be around his siblings at all safely at that point. And it put such a strain on our marriage, on our ministry, on our relationships, on our finances. It was so incredibly difficult and so incredibly painful that we were brought up on these charges. So this is what ended up happening. My husband was in the process of taking a call. At that time, we lived in Colorado, taking a call to New York. And that was the way the situation ended up being resolved. And even that, we were threatened at different points that our other children would be removed from our home, that we would have child abuse charges brought against us that would prevent us from, working because we would be on a child abuse registry. Some people treated us very well, recognizing the system is broken, and some treated us horribly. We were told we weren't good parents. We were belittled. I sat in meetings where people talked to me about how I needed to learn parenting skills, and I needed to learn to calm myself down, even though I probably had skills that were highly above many of the people who were talking to me that way. But it was extremely painful. It was extremely difficult. And if we hadn't moved, I'm not really sure what would happen. I think we would have been brought up. I think we would have been brought up on those charges. I think our attorney, we had a very good attorney, would have helped to lessen those charges, and we would have eventually gotten our son the care that he needed. But, oh my goodness, it was extremely difficult. So, and thankfully here in New York, the system has been better. Still broken, still difficult, but we were able to get our son the care that he needed here. It took a while, but he did end up going into residential treatment. And as I said, he's doing great today. He's doing so well. God has brought him so much healing. But we went through a very painful time where we were falsely accused. And these verses are so helpful. Another verse from Exodus, we're going to read it later in the Bible reading plan, Exodus 14:14, I remember was a very important verse for me at the time. So I had this whole notebook of notes that I took with us when we went to court. And at the very top of the page, I wrote several Bible verses. I read those Bible verses every single day, and I clung to that truth that God would fight for me, because I did not see how this case and this situation could possibly have a happy ending, but I trusted in God. So if you have been falsely accused of something, I'd had times in my life off and on where people had accused me of things I didn't do. If you're in ministry, you're going to get it from one end or another, but never a situation like what we went through where we were taken to court. Taken to court for child abuse, child neglect. It's completely insane. It was unbelievably painful. I had never been through an experience like that. If you have been through an experience where you have been falsely accused of something like that, I just want to encourage you that you will get through it somehow, that you are not alone. It felt so lonely and isolating. We didn't have other friends who'd been wrongly accused of child abuse. So it was so disheartening, so difficult. I want to encourage you. And again, these verses, I look at this, verse 3, it says, "When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose words I praise, in God I trust. I will not be afraid. What can mortal man do to me?" I clung to those promises during this time. I did not know what was going to happen. I know many of you have been through tough situations with divorce where, the person that you're not in a relationship with anymore says things that are untrue. Please just know that these verses, that God is here for you, God will protect you, God will guide you. Sometimes we don't get the happy ending that we want here on earth either, and that is really, really hard. But again, I encourage you, when you are afraid, trust in God. It says, "In God, whose words I praise, in God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can mortal man do to me?" That we can rise above even being wrongly accused, even situations that really are deeply unfair in this lifetime. That that we can trust God, that we don't have to be afraid, and that we don't have to be afraid of anything that other human beings can do to us, that we know that God is ultimately in control. Okay, so that's our reading for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.